Hello everyone, today we discuss over here the biology paper of class 8 half yearly and the solutions are over here. So let us start with the first question where it says name the following. The gaseous envelope of the earth, you know it is the atmosphere. Then the process by which the plants make their food, photosynthesis. Then the type of reproduction seen in yeast is budding. The female reproductive part of the plant, you can write carpel or pistil, or you can also write as gynoecium, right? Name the conducting tissues in plants. We know that very well. They are the xylem and the phloem. So you have to mention both of them because it says conducting tissues, right? Now fill in the blanks. We come to the fill in the blanks. The stalk of the flower is called as the pedicel. The food chains are interconnected with each other to make a food web. The interaction of the living things with their physical environment is called as an ecosystem. Dash is the only living component in xylem. We know that it is xylem parenchyma. Water enters the root hair by the process of osmosis. So that is that for the fill in the blanks. Now let us come to define the following. Define the following. Ascent of sap. Now ascent of sap is the upward movement. See, remember I'm just giving you the keywords over here and you have to write the full sentences properly. Upward movement of water and minerals through the plant from the root to the highest shoot tip. Asexual reproduction, where there is no fusion of gametes. That means there are no reproductive cells involved as such. It is uniparental. Two parents are not involved in asexual reproduction. Vegetative propagation, when the reproduction occurs with the help of vegetative parts, right? So vegetative parts means what? Vegetative parts like root, stem, leaves, which are not reproductive parts. Flower is the reproductive parts. When the reproduction happens with any vegetative part other than the flower, then it is called as vegetative propagation. Tissue culture, when the new plant is developed in a test tube, right? New plant is developed in a test tube in laboratory conditions. So that is where what is called as the tissue culture. Pollination, you know it is the transfer of pollens from the anther to the stigma. From anther to stigma. Now it can be from anther to stigma of the same flower, or a different flower on the same plant, or a different flower on a different plant. We have studied about self-pollination and cross-pollination, but pollination generally is defined as the transfer of pollens from anther to stigma. Okay, so now we move on to the next question that is over here, where it talks about state the function of the following. These various organs are mentioned and you have to mention the functions of these various organs. So first of all is the calyx. Now you know calyx, it is responsible for protection of the flower in bud condition. So when the flower is in the bud condition, is in the bud state, then calyx helps to protect it, and also it is because it is green in color, it also helps in photosynthesis, right? Then we have the corolla. Corolla has a great role to play. It protects the inner lying parts like the reproductive parts, right? So it protects the reproductive part. Protection I will mention over here. Protects the reproductive parts, and also It helps to attract insects and help in pollination. So helps in pollination. So this would be the function. Then thalamus. Thalamus is responsible for holding on to the floral parts. The floral parts are all located on thalamus. So it is the location of all floral parts, right? So all floral parts are located on thalamus. Then we come to phloem parenchyma. Obviously, it helps in storage of food. Then we come to rhizobium bacteria. Rhizobium bacteria help in nitrogen fixation, where they capture the atmospheric nitrogen and they convert it into nitrogenous compounds, which help in increasing the fertility of the soil. Okay, so that is that for it. Oh, I rubbed off half of the part, so let me rub the entire part. Okay. Right. So now we come to the next part of the question paper. Over here it is. Let me put it up and move it a little bit to the sideways. Differentiate between herbivores and carnivores. We already know that. Herbivores are obtain their food from plants, and carnivores obtain their food from animals, right? They eat animals and they eat plants. Biotic and abiotic components. So the living components of the atmosphere, the living components are the biotic components, whereas the non-living components of an ecosystem are called as its abiotic components, right? Producer and consumers. Now all the plants are producers because they produce food, right? By the process of photosynthesis. Now all the animals are the consumers because they depend on the plants or the animals for their food, directly or indirectly. They are obtaining their food. They are not able to prepare their own food. So their producers are the autotrophs, right? They are able to produce their own food, whereas animals are all heterotrophs, which are dependent on others for their food. So that is the difference between the producer and the consumer. Budding and binary fission. In budding, you have seen in yeast that a bud will grow like this and it will continue to stick. Sorry, my drawing is pathetic, so I'll better remove it. So in budding, you would have seen that a bud grows, if it is a cell, yeast cell like this, the bud grows over here like this, and it continues to stick. It is not separated. So it is like this part, sorry, it is taking away the entire thing. So it is like the cell is not separated from this is the cell nucleus, this is also the nucleus over here. So the cells which are new cells that are growing are not separated from their parent body, whereas in binary fission there is a total separation of the two cells. So it is like these cells will continue to grow like this, and they will finally separate into two individual cells. But here the cells, they are not separated from each other. So that is the basic difference between budding and binary fission. So in budding, the new organism that is there, the new cell is not separated from the parent body, whereas in binary fission, the parent cell divides completely into two daughter cells. Unisexual and bisexual flowers. Now unisexual flowers, they will consist of either the androecium or the gynoecium, either of these. Androecium, sorry. either the androecium or the gynoecium is present, whereas in bisexual flowers, there both androecium and gynoecium are present. That is the basic difference. Now, let us move on to the objective type questions. Bacteria reproduces by, yes, you know, binary fission. Dahlia propagates by means of root. Male and female gametes fuse to form zygote. Now let us bring up the next paper over here. Move it ahead so that it is easier to find. Okay, so let us come to the next one now. This is just the objective type of questions that are there. So the element which activates enzymes for metabolic reaction is calcium. Self-pollination is seen in the following flowers. P. Example of a symbiont is lichens. The flora of boreal forests are spruce. And we move on to the next segment of questions. This is the next segment of questions, and they are again MCQs. So the parasite which draws nutrition from the human intestine, they are the tapeworm. An aquatic plant but pollinated by insect, lotus. The plants pollinated by wind is maize. Give the location of the following. So here you have to mention the location of the following. So tropical rainforest, you will find that they are generally found in the tropical regions of the earth, which is like the Central America, the South America, the Amazon basins. The Amazon forests are all tropical rainforests. Then in India, they are mostly found in the northeastern region and on the west coast. So that is the location of the tropical rainforest. Then if we talk about the temperate forest, what is mentioned in your book is just they are found in the temperate regions of the earth. So you simply mention that they are found in the temperate regions of the earth. Now if we talk about the boreal forest, they are found in cold countries like Canada, Alaska, Sweden, Russia, Norway, Finland, Mongolia, Siberia, all those things. So boreal forests, they are found in those countries. Stamens, where are the stamens found? The stamens are found on the flower, which is, they are the third whorl of the flower. So simply mentioned there. Either you can mention they are found on the thalamus, or you can mention it they are found inside the flower. Same goes with carpel. You can say they are the third, for stamens you can say they are the third whorl of the flower. You can mention third whorl over here, and third whorl. Stamens are the third whorl. They are found inside the flower. And carpel, you can say that they are innermost whorl of the flower. So that will give you the location of these things. Now we move to the last segment, which is the long and the short answer type of questions. So I'll just expand it a bit so that you can see it clearly. Now, what do you mean by ecological pyramid? Now, when we talk about an ecological pyramid, the first thing that comes to the first term that comes to our mind is the graphical representation, right? So it needs to be a graphical representation. What is the graphical representation of? This is a graphical representation of the biomass, how many organisms are there, and the productivity. Productivity means the energy level. So that is represented at each trophic level with in the form of ecological pyramids. And of course, they are a part of an ecosystem. So they belong to one ecosystem only. So the definition is already given in your textbook. What are the three types of ecological pyramids? You already know that. They are pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy, right? So this is the graphical representation of the number of organisms, the biomass of the organisms, and the productivity at each trophic level in any ecosystem. So the answer is given in the definition itself. Now, what are parasites? Parasites are organisms that live on, that derive their nutrition from living hosts, right? So, like unlike saprophytes, which derive their nutrition from dead and decaying organisms, parasites, they derive their nutrition from living hosts and cause harm to them, right? Now, there would be total and partial parasites. So, total parasites are the ones that derive their total nutrition from their hosts, whereas partial parasites would be the ones, parasites that would derive partial nutrition, means part of their nutrition they obtain from elsewhere and part of their nutrition they derive from the host. So, total parasite, the example is Cuscuta or the amarbale, and for the partial parasites it is the mistletoe. So the examples are also given over here. Now let us talk about what is a forest. So we discussed about this, that a large area, a forest is a large area. It needs to be large. It is not a small area. It is a large area which is covered by trees and other plants that grow by, other plants are also there that grow pretty close to each other, right? So that is what constitutes a forest. Now if we talk about the layers of the forest, so you are asked to give the 4 layers of the forest. So layers of the forest would be, the first one is the forest floor. Then after forest floor there would be the understory. After the understory there would be the canopy. After the canopy there will be the emergent layer, the topmost layer which is visible from above, the emergent layer. So these are the 4 layers of the forest. Now let us move on to the next question. It says, state 4 characteristics of insect pollinated plants. So for insect pollinated plants, you know that they need to attract the insects to come to them. So mostly they are sweet smelling flowers because they produce scent and nectar for the insects to come and feed on them. Then they have brightly colored flowers, brightly colored petals, brightly colored flowers, in order for them to attract insects, so that the insects can come and sit on them. And then they have this sticky stigma and sticky pollens as well. They need their pollens to be sticky as well, so that the pollens can stick very easily to the body of the insects, and sticky stigma as well, so that when the pollens are transferred, the pollens can stick easily to the stigma. So those are the characteristics of insect pollinated flowers. Now we talk about advantages and disadvantages of vegetative propagation. So if we are talking about advantages, then we can say that they retain, let's talk about advantages. So they retain the parent characters, right? The daughters, the daughter plants or the next generation plant, they retain characteristics of the parents are retained. So if some desired characteristics are there, they are retained over there along with them. And it is a much faster way for reproduction because they're not dependent on any other criteria, like they need their reproductive organs to mature and things like that. So it is a faster way of reproducing, and then it is also a sure shot method, a certain method. So it is certain that the reproduction will happen over there. So any of these 2 advantages you can write. Now when we talk about disadvantages, And first and foremost, there is overcrowding. So because the plants, they grow close by to each other, there is overcrowding, and this character, which was an advantage, can become a disadvantage when there is no variation in the next generation, because exactly the same parental characteristics would be inherited by the next generation plants, the new plants. Also, the disadvantage to that is that many diseases some disease that might be there in the parent, that type of disease also gets transferred in the new plants. So that is a disadvantage as well. Now let us talk about the next question, which is explain the method of asexual reproduction in Spirogyra. And you know that Spirogyra reproduces by fragmentation. So all you need to mention is that the cell body breaks into different fragments or smaller pieces, and each of the smaller pieces, they grow back into a new plant. So you need to explain about the fragmentation and also draw the diagram given it along with it. You can draw it. It is always better to use the explanation with diagrams wherever you can draw it, even though it does not say over here. Now, what is transpiration? So transpiration is the loss of water in form of water vapors. Yes, in form of water vapors from the plant. Excess water, loss of excess water. Now, not just the water, but it is excess water, extra water that is there in the form of water vapors. Then explain transpiration with the help of an experiment. The experiment was already shown to you, the bell jar experiment, where you cover a potted plant with a bell jar and leave it in the sunlight, and after a while you will find that there are droplets of water on the bell jar. So that experiment you need to give. State the 4 components of xylem and state the functions of each. So the 4 components of xylem are tracheids, then vessels, then xylem parenchyma, and xylem fiber, right? So tracheids, they are responsible for upward conduction. Tracheids and vessels, in fact, both of them are responsible for upward conduction of water. Vessels, they form a continuous tube, whereas the tracheids, they give mechanical support as well. They are also part of the tube, but in addition to transport of water and minerals. So both of them are responsible for transport of water and minerals, and along with that they also provide tracheids provide mechanical support, whereas vessels, they help by forming a continuous tube being attached to each other so that the water can be transported upwards with ease. Xylem parenchyma, you know, it also helps in conduction to a certain extent, and majorly it helps in the storage of the food. Now, xylem fibers, we know, are the dead cells, and they help in providing mechanical support to the plant. The strength that the plant gets comes from all the fibers that are present in there. So they are the functions of the 4 components of xylem. Now we come to what are root hairs. Now, root hairs are extensions of the root cells, what you can call as protuberances. So they are single celled, they are unicellular. Root hairs are always unicellular protuberances or extensions. So you can use the term protuberance or extension. They are extensions of the epidermis of root, and they help in increasing the surface area for the absorption of water. They increase the surface area for water absorption because they are pretty long, right? So they help in increasing the surface area for water absorption. Now over here, draw neat label diagram of part of typical flower. You can do that. The 4 whorls you need to show. State the different layers of soil with the help of a diagram. So you have already done that, and the different layers of soil are humus. Then after humus you have the topsoil. After topsoil you have the subsoil and the bedrock, right? So these are the 4 layers of the soil. And then what else is there? What is layering? The last question. What is layering? And draw a neat and label diagram. So layering is when you take an intact branch. That means you do not remove it, right? You take an intact branch and bend it and cover it with moist soil. And cover it with moist soil, right? So that is called as layering. So there is you bend it and then you put a heap of soil, moist soil on top of it. So that is what layering is all about. So that concludes your biology paper. I hope you got most of the answers right. Thank you so much for watching. Take care everyone. Bye bye.